Alright, so this demo is going to go through how to do a kind of easy ease motion graphic style animation with a sphere. And this is actually based on a demo I found on YouTube, but I'm kind of modifying it a little bit and kind of just going through it, breaking it down a little bit further for my students. So right here I have my example. And so I'm just going to go ahead and hit play so we can kind of see what it looks like. And really what it is here is just a sphere that animates across, but we're trying to kind of deal with that idea of spacing and timing in an animation. So instead of something just going the constant speed across a screen, we've animated this to have a little bit of like a pickup and a little bit of a gradual slowdown versus being the same speed the entire time. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go back here, and what I have my students do is create a new project, and this is going to be just a new canvas. We're going to go to inches, and I'm going to have this be 11 for the width and 8.5 for the height. I'm going to leave it as DPI at 200 with 49 max layers. I'm going to hit create. Once we get in, what I recommended my students doing was kind of planning this out. So what I did was I ended up kind of doing like a base drawing here of, and the brush I'm using here, if I go to my brush library, I'm going to inking and technical pen. You may want to modify the weight of that line too. I think that's pretty thin, so I might bump this up a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and draw my line. I'm just going to hold down here to draw like a nice baseline, and this is going to be really where my sphere is kind of going across. So you want to do this towards the bottom of your image, not at the bottom, but towards the bottom. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to kind of plan out this animation. So we're going to have a sphere, and this sphere, we're going to have essentially 12 images of the sphere animating across. So generally, like if we don't have any speed changes, what we would see is our sphere would have a position or 12 different positions, and they would be equally spaced. But we want this thing to have a little bit more zip, a little bit more pickup, gradual pickup, and then also a little bit of like a breaking aspect to it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of draw my number system with how we really want this thing to be, where these numbers are going to be a little bit tighter in the beginning and then gradually space out, and then at the end kind of be clumped together. Okay, so we're going to do this animation. We're going to actually kind of sketch it out with spheres and kind of practice first. So the first thing I tell my students to do here is just to draw a sphere. I'm going to do this on a new layer. And so I'm going to just make a circle, or try to make it the best circle I can. I'm going to hold down, and then with another finger I'm going to tap, and that's going to straighten out my sphere. I'm going to pick up my pen then. And now I can go to my arrow, which is my transform tool, and I can go to uniform and just rescale this, or I can move this over. So I want to put this at the position 1. And I'm trying to kind of just get this so it's right on the bottom of that line. From here, we're just going to go ahead and duplicate. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. I'm going to go to my layer. I'm going to swipe left and duplicate. And I'm going to go ahead and just move that to position 2. So one thing you can see here is this snapping is turned on. So I like that snapping on. That way my sphere will kind of stay in the same position as it goes horizontally across the screen. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. I'm going to keep doing this. So we're going to duplicate this to the point where we have 12 spheres. And what I'm doing is I'm placing these at the spots correlating with the number. So 1, 2, 3, and so forth. All right, so here we have kind of like the layout, and what you're going to see is this sphere is kind of clumped at the beginning and the end, just like the numbers were, and these are all correlating to our animation process here. So at the end, this is really what we want our animation to kind of look like, but we're going to do this in a much more cleaned up way. So what I'm going to do next is, because we have too many layers, I'm going to go ahead and pinch these layers together and just kind of smash them together so that they're all there, and I can still kind of reference positioning, even the bottom line there. And then what I'm going to do is just click on the end and turn down my opacity. So this is just a reference. So the next thing I'm going to do here is we're going to go and we're going to start making our sphere, but this time we want to kind of pick like a color for the sphere, and we're going to fill it. So I'm going to go up to my color picker on the top right. I'm going to pick my sphere, and I'm going to go out with my technical pen, and I'm going to draw a new sphere. Might bump up the weight just a little bit. It doesn't really matter, but a similar size to what I've already done. Whoops. We do want to work on a new layer for this, so I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer, and I'm going to draw my sphere. I'm gonna go ahead and put this one over on the left side where that first frame is. And what I'm gonna do to fill this is I'm just gonna take my color up on the top right and quickly drop it into that circle on its layer. From here, we're gonna go ahead and go to our layers and we're gonna duplicate again. And we're kind of just doing the same process over and moving this into position where it should be by layer. So this time we will not collapse all these layers. This time it's really important that we don't do that. And we'll show you why in a second. So I'm gonna go ahead and just duplicate this out so that I have all these on separate layers. Again, I still have my reference there, so we're gonna leave that alone and we're just gonna kind of get this all lined up and ready to animate. Okay, so at this point, my final sphere is kind of drawn in there. It looks pretty good in terms of the positions. Now we want to turn on our animation assist. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our wrench in the top left. And I'm going to go to Canvas, and I'm going to go to Animation Assist. All right, so that's going to turn on this little playhead at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And what you're going to see is already our animation's looking good. We'll eventually turn off that background sketch layer. But what I'm seeing then is just that animation moving, really well across the screen. If I click on settings, I can change the frames per second. Right now it's at 15. I can make this faster, or I could slow this down. All right, so let's leave it. I'm going to leave it at 12. You see there's other settings in here. We have loop, ping pong. Ping pong would just make it go back and forth. I'm going to leave mine on loop. There's some other settings, one of which is our onion skin. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you what the onion skins are. You can see here that the main sphere, like if I click on a frame down at the bottom, that's correlated with a cell up here. So, but also the fact that we can see the other frames that we've drawn and the other layers, and those are indicated in just like a lighter color. So one thing we're going to do real quick, just to keep organizational or for organizational purposes, we're going to go rename stuff. So I'm going to click on my layers, and layer 1, I'm just going to leave as layer 1, or maybe like I could tap it and go rename, and then I could just call this one sketch. But layer 2, I'm going to call this, or my first sphere, I want to call this 1. I'm going to do that for every single layer. So I'm going to tap, I'm going to click rename, and I'm just going to title that as 1. Same thing for the next one. Tap, rename, and 2. All right. So go ahead and name these all the way up to about 12 or whatever you have for your number of layers. So I ended up with 11 frames or 11 layers of the sphere for this one, and that's fine. So the next thing I want to do here is we're gonna take a look back and just kind of play through it. So we have this thing; it's looking pretty good, and we're actually gonna create this illusion of a little bit more of like a speed up effect and having some blurring slash these trails that are coming off of our sphere. So let's go ahead and do that. One thing you could do if the if the fact that there's a lot of cells showing, or because of the onion skins, you can go back to your settings and you can lower the onion skin frames. So if there's too many for you, if it's kind of bothering you, you could even lower it to 2, so you only see the current one and the next one, or the current one and the previous 2, or I'm sorry, the current one, the one ahead, and the one behind. So we're going to say for these first 3, that one, this one, and this one, that looks fine. But when I get to this next one, what I want to do is have it blend. So I'm going to say right here, I want these. So it's going to be this cell, which is 3, blending into 4. So what I'm going to do is it's going to play 1, 2, 3, and then when it gets between 3 and 4, it's going to have that blend. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to swipe over and duplicate 4. And so I have 2 of 4. I'm going to swipe over and I'm going to duplicate 3. And I'm going to merge 3 and 4 together. So these 2 are going to become one layer. All right, so that one's kind of like a bigger jump, and we're going to see this go between those 2. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to go to that new combined layer, and I'm going to color match. So I'm just going to click and hold to get that color. I'm going to go with this. I'm going to connect these into one kind of longer pill shape, stretched out sphere. And how I'm going to do that is just I'm going to go to the top of one. I'm going to create a line and kind of click and hold I'm gonna straighten that out. If I need to edit that, I can go to edit shape at the top and adjust those bounding spheres. And then I'm gonna do the same thing at the bottom. Bring this down. And that looks pretty good. If I wanted to edit again, I just click edit shape up at the top. Sometimes you might have to tell it if it's a line or a polygon. I'm gonna click off, and I'm just gonna fill these. So it is important that you close that gap, otherwise it'll fill outside of that. So we're gonna go ahead and do that again and again for a couple of these frames. So between 1, 2, 3, and then boom, we get the blend. The next one, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna blend again. So what I'm gonna do on this one, now because I probably could have done this by duplicating 4 previously, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate 5 and just move it. So I'm gonna swipe, I'm gonna duplicate, and we're gonna pull this back. And I'm gonna have this stretch be a little bit further. So let's see where I'm at here. So we have this one, and then it goes to the next cell. And so these 2 frames, let's see. This one and this one, we're gonna merge together. And then we're gonna do that same effect where we kind of draw between these. So I'm just pinching, and then I go ahead and draw in. Okay, I'm just clicking and holding to straighten that line out. Same thing at the bottom. If I need to edit, I can go to edit the shape. I'm gonna drop in here. So let's see, we have this one, and then it stretches a little bit further. And now we're gonna keep doing that effect here until we kind of start slowing down. So I believe after this one, our animation starts slowing down. So we're gonna we'll leave it kind of a stretch at this point. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do this one. I'll swipe and duplicate. I'll go ahead and just pull it back. I kind of like the stretch to be a little bit longer in the middle there. And I'm going to go ahead and let's see, these 2, I'm going to merge those. And now I'm going to connect those as well. Oops. I'm gonna go ahead and hit play and let's see how this is looking. So I have that little like kind of stretch effect in the middle right before it slows down. If I wanted to, I could probably add another little stretch there at the tail end, but we're gonna kind of move on at this point, and we're gonna do some blurring with some streaks. So we want this to only be happening when it's the longer ones. So I'm gonna go to this frame, and we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make a new layer above. And what I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna swipe to the right on that and that stretch layer. I'm going to group those. So those are now going to be one together. Now it's getting a little confusing because I have all these onion skins popping up. So if you want, you could turn off your onion skins for a second. And what I'm going to do is just be on that new blank layer. And so what I'm doing on here is I'm going to go ahead in and just make some streaks that go off of this. So I would recommend doing this with a couple different colors. So I'm going to go in with a yellow, and I'm going to bump my thickness up here. Let's test it. Okay, that looks okay. I'm going to kind of keep this maybe one towards the top. I'll do one towards the bottom. And you can alternate the colors here too. I am clicking and holding just to straighten those lines out. And we'll get a green one in. So we have all these streaks here. And what we're going to do next is we're going to go up to our magic wand, and we're going to go down to motion blur. And we're going to click the layer option. So with this one, we're going to blur these sideways just by clicking on the layer and sliding. So I'm going to click on the layer and just pull these to create that kind of blurred effect. Right. If these seem to be going like a little bit of a different direction, I could click on my transform and rotate this, or even move these down. And so that looks pretty good. Now I'm ready to go on to my next 2 layers and essentially do the same thing. So I'm going to go create a new layer, and I'm going to go ahead and check these, swipe right, and group them, right? And then on this one, I'm gonna go ahead and do that same thing. So my pattern was yellow, red, yellow, green, and that's kind of the layer of the streaks that I'm gonna be doing. If I really wanted to, I could go back and color match, so or even just copy these and kind of paste these, but I'm gonna go ahead and redraw them. And I'm gonna turn on my onion skins. There we go. So I'm gonna turn on my onion skins here, just so I can kind of see where my previous streaks were, so I can kind of keep them uniform. And one thing you don't want to do here, one thing you don't want to do here is you don't want to make these stretch out, quite as far as they started, but they could still kind of touch back a little bit to the original placement. Again, if your lines are off, you can edit shape and replace stuff. Okay. Go ahead to my red. So again, the reason we're doing this is to create that illusion of what we call easy ease, which is an effect in After Effects that makes something kind of look like it's gradually breaking or gradually starting up instead of just going at constant speed the whole time. So again, I'm going to go here, go to my motion blur, go to layer, and I'm just going to stretch to the right. That looks pretty good. And I have one more to do, so I'm going to go there. Again, make a new layer. I'm going to go ahead and swipe these right to group them, and let's go ahead and finish this up. All right, so it looks like I have everything ready to go. So if I kind of click through, you can see that the layers are playing in order. So it's going to start at layer 1, and then it'll keep going, and it'll then play the groups. So it's not playing layer 13 separate. It's playing that whole group together. So let's go ahead and hit play and see what this looks like. And so I think that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. One thing I'm going to do at this point is kind of go back and kind of put in like a little background for myself. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this. All right, first thing, I want to pick a background color that looks good. I think it looks good to kind of match the color of the sphere, but you can play around. So if I click on the background color of my layers, let's go ahead and find something that's maybe going to match okay. You could always play around a little bit there. Does it look better if it's a little bit darker, a little bit brighter? Let's see how that looks. So I think that one looks pretty decent. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a base in here with a little bit of like a texture. So how I'm going to do that, this is what gets a little bit trickier. So I'm going to go down here. We do not want our sketch layer on anymore, so we're going to uncheck that. That's not even a layer. All right, we're going to go down. We're going to put a new layer on. All right, and this layer, it's blank right now, but we're going to tap on this frame. And we're going to say this is going to be, we're going to tap on this first layer. We're going to draw on it first. So I'm going to go ahead, in this case, I'm going to turn off my background, but I want to match the background color. So I'm just going to click and hold to match that background color, and you'll see why. So I'm going to uncheck this, and I'm actually going to turn this back on for just reference for a quick second. So what I'm going to do here is I match that background color. I'm going to put a base in here, but I have to draw it as a kind of like a rectangle, and then we're going to put a little bit of texture in there. So what I'm going to do here at the bottom is just draw out wherever that base is. I don't want this to overlap, but I'm going to draw over that baseline and try to match it the best I can to what I had. And then I'm just going to kind of make like a little rectangle down here, and you'll see why in a second. And I'm going to close that off, and I'm also going to fill that, okay? Oops. So I want to make sure that closes so it'll just fill in there. All right. So what happens is now when the background color is turned on, we're going to turn off our sketch, turn on the background color, is we don't see that rectangle box. But what we're going to do is we're going to spritz in there a little bit of a texture. So up here in our brushes, we're going to go to maybe Elements has some good ones. So we have like Hard Rain would look good, Crystals, Clouds, or even, let's see, our textures. We have some of these textures over there. Let's even go to like Industrial. So some of these like Wasteland might look good, or Heavy Metal. So I'm going to go with Heavy Metal, and we'll see what happens. So this one want to be a different color. So I'm going to go to almost like a brighter white or a teal, lighter teal. And I'm going to go out here. I'm going to play with my brush size, and I'm going to go out and just kind of put a little bit of texture. Now you can see here it paints everywhere, and I don't want that going on the sphere. I only want it in this box. So what I'm going to do to this layer, this little kind of semi-rectangle, is I'm going to tap it. I'm going to say on this one I want you to be alpha locked, so it'll only paint inside of that. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of test this out. All right, and I don't want this to go too far down. I just want it to go a little bit down off the middle there, and that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn off. I'm turning on my background color, and we can see this thing, and it's looking pretty good. Now here's the problem: you're going to play it, and that base is going to disappear. Okay, well there's a fix for that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we need to make sure that that background or that bottom piece there is at the lowest part on our layers. So you can see here I moved this. wherever it was. Whoops, I moved this from wherever it was down to the bottom. So if it was above my sketch layer, I need to move that down. The reason being is the software gives you an option for a background, but it's only on the lowest layer, not the background color layer, but actually on the bottom actual layer that you've created. So what we're going to do here is we're going to tap on this layer, and you're going to see it's going to give us an option that wasn't there before, which is background. We're going to swipe that on, and now that background will stay the entire time. So from here, a couple other things we could do if we wanted this to pause at the end and kind of stop. We could go to that last frame, and we could say, all right, we want to hold on this frame, so we could tap that. We could say hold duration, and if we slide, you can see it's automatically making some new frames. So we could have it say pause for like 10 frames and then keep playing. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. All right, we have that nice little streak there, and now our animation is done. Next step would be just going up to our wrench. We're going to go to share, and we're going to send this out as an animated MP4 or an animated GIF. I prefer the MP4 because that'll play in Schoology. So go ahead and hit that, and we're going to say export frames per second 12. That sounds good. Hit export, and you are good to go.